Is U.S. companies in terrible trouble going into the next season and therefore after? After all these years of great successes and a big boom and now a couple years of hardship compounded with what's looming around the corner, oh my God, I don't think anybody's going to have, well, a sense of what's going to happen, who's going to survive, or how's our industry going to hold up here in the United States. Let's review after this. Hey, welcome back to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging with the guy. Hey, I'm Justin the Guy. And first, before we dive into what we're going to be faced with going in the future is how did we get here? Well, not that part, but what the industry actually is. Where does your bike come from? Well, what makes up a bike? Well, as a mechanic, there's a lot of parts that go to a lot of these tools. So, bike is a part of many pieces, and those pieces are made in several different countries. So, shifted around and moved around to make one bike, and then boxed up and shipped overseas to the United States. Well, which companies does it actually port out of? Well, that's a big question, and let's divulge that with my special guest, John Bradley. Do you have any insights of those companies branching out and using, was it, do you think, just it's cheaper to build it there? Or was it also not just cheaper to build it there, but they have less barriers to cross when it comes to tariffs and taxes and everything else?
Well, basically, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, you're always looking to produce, have the least amount of cost, to give yourself the greatest amount of profit. You look at what has happened to, I guess, and I'll use this term loosely, the American bike industry. I mean, Schwinn used to be built in Chicago, and for various reasons, I think some of it was strategic on Schwinn's part, but a lot of the components drove them to find production elsewhere, and competitively, they felt they had to go initially to Taiwan, and Schwinn's first venture into Taiwan was with Giant, and then it's kind of interesting because so it was less expensive to produce that bike and ship it back to the United States than producing it in Chicago or actually in Mississippi, which is I think where actually I know for a fact that Schwinn had a factory in Mississippi for a while because they were chasing lower overhead, from the Midwest down to the South. And then they moved all the way to Taiwan with Giant. But then you see production moving into China. And Giant actually started building a factory in China when I was with them. In fact, we went to their facility outside of Shanghai, which was an amazing plant. But that's what happens. And then, as the tariffs came up against China, then they started going, gee whiz, maybe we ought to put a factory down in Cambodia or Vietnam, someplace like that. So that's what's happening is they're just shifting production lines to get lower cost.
Well, some of those great insights, well, yeah, there definitely is a history of where all these companies have basically evolved to, and we'll go with that in a second here. But when you're looking at particular companies that make a bike and the frames are made in one place while the tubing is from somewhere else, and then the dropouts are here, and those spokes and hubs and everything else in between it's a collage of different componentry pieces to make the frame to make that bike. So with that, well, let's take a look at some of that historical pieces with John here. The frame itself, and those, through a OEM contract through Trekker Specialized or whoever, they have, they try to protect the design and geometries and all that makes the frame different.
Well, and part of the agreements, you when you make an agreement, you go to Taiwan or China, and the agreement is this information will not be shared. If somebody's not going to get a look at your design drawings or what they can, you can figure a lot of that stuff out after the fact. But I don't think the companies are in the habit of sneaking around too much. I mean, there's probably some of that goes on, but you're just trying to make the best product you can in the best place that you can make it. Is typically what I was after. So.
Okay, with all that being said, it's complicated, right? It's evolved from the years of past of the 50s and 60s where everything was being made in the United States to make that one bike. Well, now it's a collage of global bestness, I would say, or actually who makes the best stuff at the best price and actually collage it together. It's one of those situations where you don't want a junky derailleur when you can buy a nice one from another country, right? Well, there lies the problem with not just cycling industry. It's actually, as a whole, a lot of different retail pieces or specialty outdoor items are affected like this. Bikes are one of the more complicated ones out there on the market, but that affects a whole bunch of other things. And also the cycling industry is just not bikes. It's all the accessories, parts, helmets, shoes, gloves, everything else that goes with that, bike racks and so forth, made all over in different parts of the world to actually fine-tune their craft to give you the best quality product at the end of the day with the best price. Well, looming ahead, this is what the hammer has said. Now we're faced with some serious, hardships. With companies in the United States, let's put it that way, we just divulged that a lot of these bikes are made in different countries and a lot of different parts and pieces, and they may have been shelled and shifted around to avoid the current tariffs that have been in place over the years. But here's the problem. With a company that's having a hard time already, has either too much inventory, not the right inventory, or whatever the case may be, bringing in new product, the product is going to be more expensive. Therefore, they're going to have to turn that price onto the customer. Basically, elevating the prices that are already really expensive to begin with. Wow. So there eludes that problem, also on top of the economy where we're really nervous. A lot of people are not very comfortable buying any big ticket items, and bicycles are one of those, and therefore those sales are going to even slump even more so. So if a company that's been bringing in a lot of product from overseas, one of the bigger 3 or 4 companies that are United States companies, we're going to be drastically affected. There's going to be some problems for sure in the United States, but the thing is, they also sell around the world. So looking at Australia, the UK, even other Asian markets where they actually sell those products, we're not going to be affected by the tariffs that are here in the United States. They still can probably get a little bit of profit out of those particular markets, or maybe they'll just shift it completely that direction. In any case, they have a lot of different directions that can go, and they've already been pulling a lot of levers. But let's take a look at what John Bradley thinks of what the state of the state after these tariffs have hit. After that, come back. What about the smaller companies that are trying to just get on by bringing in product too?
It's for the bicycle industry. There's nothing good about this. You look overall at what's happening to the economy right now, and I think a lot of people are kind of nervous. And so there goes, they're going to hold on to their, maybe they're not going to buy that new bike or those new, snazzy new set of wheels or whatever. It's a chilling effect in that regard. Pricing, it's complicated because, you have a number of companies with different sources of production for, whatever they're building, frames or tools or whatever it is. And you got to figure out, you got to adjust your pricing now to whatever the tariffs are on it. It's hard. I mean, I think the thing I was thinking about a bit also is a lot of these companies are still reeling from the pandemic and the inventory problems and all that. And it's like, oh boy, I hope everybody survives. I don't know if everybody will. It's going to be some hard riding on this one.
Well, it's looking pretty, darn right gruesome. And the scenario of actually companies that you're working with. There's not just the auto industry that has parts coming in from all different countries, bicycles as well. Will this change the environment of having us produce more bikes in the United States? No. They're going to figure out ways how to get around this by maybe assembly plants or something of that nature. But honestly, it takes several years and a lot of commitment to do such an act. In other words, it's not a flip a switch and it's being done. It takes 10 to 15 years. And then again, is you get a product that's still going to be more expensive and then what you can bring in overseas, even if these tariffs still exist that particular time. This is such an edgy situation where they don't know if they're going to last as a leverage piece for something else going forward. But in any case, it does not look good for the cycling industry as well as a lot of outdoor industry, and that's what we're faced with. A lot of people still love their bikes. A lot of people are still out there riding and enjoying those particular events outdoors, recreational wise. So there is still people out there. The other part, I think, is the other silver lining is we have a huge used market available and the prices have really gone down and a demand for those. Therefore, bike shops can leverage that used market, used parts, and well as service is huge. So the local bike shop is probably going to be okay for the most part, but the big corporations that provide those bigger brands are going to have a rough go at it, and it doesn't really look good. It depends how diverse and quick they can adjust, and if there is anybody buying bikes out there, are they going to be enticed to buy those bigger ticket items? We will see in a short term. The season is just now kicked off and we'll have a good pulse on this in the next month or two, but in any case, everybody has a very optimistic smile on their face and hoping for the best, as well as I hope we have some really good weather and enticing people to get out there and ride. I hope the economy and people feel more comfortable spending money on those recreational items and keeps us going in the bike shop realm and keeping those products coming and innovation as well. But in any case, it's one tough go for all of us in the cycling industry as well as many other industries. Just wanted to give you a little bit of insight of a historical of where bikes are come from and how's that actually affecting these big companies when it comes to derailleurs and frames and everything else, to what the state of the state is not that great, unfortunately. To get other insights of my longer interview with Mr. Bradley, please tune in on Tuesday. If you're watching this on the replay, you'll see a link below for the full-length conversation I had with John. If it's nice in your neck of woods, please go for a ride. We all need a mental break and relaxation and get our heads straight. And remember, love your bike, love your family, and just be happy that you're able to do so. In any case, well, thanks again for tuning in the garage, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.